And this is the beginning of an interview with Abraham Shenkman in the Historical Society Cottage at the Westbury Memorial Public Library. Mr. Shenkman is 94 years old, having been born on June 23, 1911. My name is Susan Kovarik, and I will be the interviewer. I am representing the Historical Society of the Westburys, an official partner in the Veterans History Project. Mr. Shenkman, would you state for the recording what war and branch of service you served in?
I served with the Coast Guard, who later became the part of the Coast Guard was taken into the U.S. Navy. So I served both the Coast Guard and the U.S. Navy. What was the other question? This was in World War II, which began December 7th, 1941.
What was your rank?
My rank was a petty officer first class, and the rating was a storekeeper first class. Now, when World War II began, all of the men who were 18 years up to 42 had to sign up with the draft board. And I signed up with the draft board in Brooklyn, where I resided at the time. The draft board made several classifications. Those who were ready to go in were classified 1A, and I was classified 3A, since I was the sole support of my mother. Now, I wasn't reclassified, and at the time I was working for a music publisher, and I met a man whose father wrote the song "Melancholy Baby." You remember that? And I was doing the renewal of this copyright, and I asked this gentleman, whose name was Charles Norton, and he was a warrant officer in the Coast Guard. And I told him of my situation, that I was classified 3A, and I wondered whether or not he could do something for me with the Coast Guard. And he told me he certainly could. And he suggested that I go to my own physician and take a physical, because the Coast Guard would give you a very demanding physical examination. I did this, and Charles Norton sent me the qualifications. And when I looked at the qualifications, I saw that I passed all of the qualifications with the exception of the height. The height qualifications were this: if you were 18 and under, you could be 5'4". If you were 21 and over, you had to be 5'6". I was 5'5". I was 1 inch short for the qualifications. And let me just turn this off a minute. It was suggested to me that I go to my own doctor and take a physical, which I did, and I passed it. And I phoned my friend to Cleveland to tell him that I passed it, and I was 1 inch short with the height qualifications. And my friend told me to remind him when I got out to Cleveland, and he would take care of it. When I got out to Cleveland, I reminded my friend. He called the doctor and came back with the information. When I went for my height requirement, I should stand on my toes. This I did, and the pharmacist mate who measured me got red in the face and suggested that I go to the gym and take care of my height. Okay.
So can you tell me what you did after you got to Cleveland? What happened then?
All right, you have it on? When I got to Cleveland, I took the oath with the Coast Guard, and I was enlisted, and I was informed that I was to work in the pay office. And this was the assignment I got. And fortunately for me, I stayed in the pay office for 2 years, and at the end of 2 years, the women, who were called spars at the time, came up from Florida, and they took over the entire pay office. At this time, I went out for training, and I trained at the U.S. Navy station outside of Chicago, and learned how to shoot the 40 millimeter guns. And from there, I went to Grand Haven, Michigan for additional training, and then again to Alameda, California for some more training, and finally I was transferred to San Francisco to go overseas. Put it off a minute, I'll see when I went overseas. I was assigned to a steamer, the USS Sea Snipe, which departed San Francisco on July 7th, 1944. And we had a long trip to the South Pacific, and finally arrived July 24th at Milne Bay, Gamadodo, New Guinea. I stayed at this base and awaited to be assigned to a ship, and I was assigned to the USS LST 168 on August 24th, 1944. And from this time on, I participated in the World War II, and our job was to beach at the various places that we fought, and I participated in 12 invasions in World War II. Now, I was on this ship, let me see. I was on this ship at the end of World War II, and we brought prisoners into Tokyo, Japan, and we had liberty for 2 weeks, which was very enjoyable at the end of the war. And from Tokyo, we departed for the United States. We arrived in Pearl Harbor December 9th, 1945, and in San Francisco, December 20th, 1945.
Can you tell me about some of the invasions that you participated in?
Okay. Yes. That's something very important. Now, the first invasion that we participated in was in the Philippines. It was called Morotai Island, and we were in the first assault landing there, and we did a lot of shooting and were being shot at quite a bit. In this invasion, we did not have any fatalities, fortunately, and we got out of there after unloading the Army with all of their trucks and all of the things that they needed for their warring. Now, let me see the second one. Now this invasion was at Morotai, and we usually had to come back again with sufficient army and personnel to help the army with their war. And so on October 1st, 1944, we arrived at Morotai Island, and the army exited at that point. Our next invasion was an extremely big one. It was the initial invasion of Leyte Island in the Philippines, and we were attacked by an enemy bomber, and we shelled from the beach by the enemy. At this invasion, we downed a Japanese plane, which would be the first of 3 that we would eventually have done.
I'd like to ask you a question.
Okay. All right.
Did you remain on the ship when these invasions came?
Oh, wait, I was at a gun.
You were at a gun on the ship?
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
so
yeah.
you were shooting.
All of us who were on the ship were at a gun.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
let me see. I can show you. See, I have pictures here. I can show you where we were at the gun.
Yeah.
Here we are. Originally, I was on a 50 caliber machine gun, and I did so well on there. I'm kind of boasting, but I did. I did so well on there. They made me captain of this 40 millimeter gun. This is a more high powered gun, and it takes 4 men to operate it.
Ah.
And I was the captain of this crew as well as the gunner. So this is me right here, right? This where I have
On
my
the front there?
yeah. Now I sat on this side of the gun, and I swung the gun north and south. The man on my left swung the gun east and west. And these 2 men took the ammunition, which was all around the gun tub, and this one was a second loader. He took the ammunition off, passed it to him, and this man put the ammunition in a slot in the gun. And being the captain of this crew, I called out the position of the plane, the enemy planes. And the way we did that, of course, we used a clock. I would say the plane is coming in at 2 o'clock. You know where you are.
Right.
The plane is coming in at 9 o'clock. You know where it was. The most dangerous time of the timing, if I hollered that the plane was coming in at 12 o'clock, that means it was a suicide plane coming in at us.
Did you have any of those?
I did. I didn't have many. We had
You
one.
had one.
We had one. And it's, I don't know how to explain it. It's just the most scariest thing that you can possibly imagine, because a suicide plane is coming in at 200 miles an hour, and you only have seconds to, so we were fortunate. We weren't the only LST that he was going after. We were 5 LSTs that were grouped together, which they shouldn't have done. On these invasions, the LSTs were they were very much apart. And being that we were 5 of us together, the suicide bomber saw this, and he figured if he could hit the LST in the middle, he could knock out all 5 ships and would kill a couple of 100 men. They carry very high explosives. So, but we were able to shoot them out of the air. Being that we were 5 LSTs, this meant we had 175 guns shooting at this guy. So we shot him out of the air.
Yes.
So we were very fortunate we weren't.
Yes.
They usually didn't go for an LST. They went for bigger things, bigger targets. They would go for a battleship, an aircraft carrier, a troop ship. So that's it. So that's this. Now let me see. You want me to go with all the?
We can tell us a little about them. Or sure.
All right.
Continue. Sure.
Let me see. So the next invasion was Leyte Island, and this was a support landing. After every initial invasion, we always came back a second time with additional troops for support. And at this support landing, we were shelled by heavy guns from the hills. Fortunately, we had no damage and no casualties. This was a normal invasion. We had no casualties, and we were really very lucky. And we departed there and went to Manila, and we were the first U.S. ship to enter Manila harbor since the Japanese occupation. When we got to Manila, this was not an invasion, but we were there, and we looked around in Manila, and the place was just devastated. The fighting there was horrendous, and it showed when we went around Manila. The post office was down, and all of the main buildings in Manila were down. The bay at Manila was crowded with ships that were sunk, and it was really bad when we got to Manila. We left Manila, and then we went to Malabang, Mindanao for another invasion, and this was a normal invasion, and we came away without casualties. Let me see. Our next invasion was Luzon in the Philippine Islands, and Luzon is one of the two biggest islands in the Philippines. And by the way, as long as I'm talking about islands, the Philippines had consisted of 1,700 islands, and the islands that we made the invasions were the big ones. Our next invasion was July 1st, 1944, and we participated in the landing at Balikpapan, Dutch Borneo. And in this invasion, we took Australian soldiers, the Australian Army, into this Balikpapan, Dutch Borneo invasion. And by the way, this was the last invasion of the war, and we were all very lucky that this was the end of it, because we couldn't take much more. So I didn't get all of them, but that's sufficient.
Oh, I just wanted to ask you, when you let the Army off in these invasions, did you come back to pick them up later on? I know you said you came back with support. You didn't come back to pick them up. Okay.
All that we did was go back and get more troops and load them up, and that was to help the Army that we originally invaded. What else?
Okay, well, I believe you stayed when the war ended, and did you want to talk any more about the battles or anything, or?
No, that was it. The battles are pretty much the same thing. Wherever we went, there was shooting. We shot at them, and they shot at us.
Right.
And we were very fortunate. We only had one casualty, and this was a man who went out of his mind. You know, when the shooting starts, it's very scary.
I can imagine.
Very scary.
In that position, I can imagine.
And the way I got around it was, I decided, I thought to myself, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to take it as it is. If I get wounded, if I get killed, that's it. That's the only way that you really could function.
Right.
Otherwise, when they get scared with all the shooting, they get into a situation where they can't move. They're paralyzed with fear. So, by thinking this way, it was the way I was able to get around it.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I was able to get through.
Yeah.
Well, now we have to go back. This is when I was in Cleveland, and the way I met this man, I was at the time prior to the war. I was working at this music company, and he specialized in copyright renewals. In the old days, when men wrote songs, the copyright ran for 28 years. And 1 year before it expired, you could renew it with filling out a card with the copyright from the copyright office and $1, and renewed it for another 28 years. But once it was renewed, it became brand new property. And regardless of what the author of the song did the first 28 years, he could sell it to any other music publisher. And this was advantageous to them, and I'll tell you why. In those days, when a man wrote a song, they had to go to these music publishers and try to get it published. And unless they were well known, they had a difficult time doing it. Now, what a lot of them did, there was one man that wrote 5 songs and was trying to get one or any of them published, and he wasn't able to do that, and he said to the publisher, "I'll sell you the songs for $50 a piece." And they did that. And what happened after that, one of the songs would become a hit. And the man who wrote the song didn't make any money out of it. The publisher made all this money.
Right.
However, when the song came up for copyright renewal, the songwriter would not go back with the original publisher. Now he could go back and make money on the thing.
We had a third chance.
So this is what I was doing with this music publisher, and this is how I came to get introduced to this man here. His name is Charles Norton. His father wrote "Melancholy Baby," and so he was the owner of the song by virtue of the estate. And he was a Coast Guardman, and that's how I got into the Coast Guard. This was the man I told about my height, and he called the doctor. The doctor told him to stay on my toes. And so he got me into the pay office, and I was there for 2 years, and I had a wonderful time in the pay office. Because right next door was the stage door canteen. And I used to hang out there because I knew nobody in Cleveland, Ohio. And I don't know if you remember this, that she was one of the first sisters, a trio. They were called the Boswell sisters, and they preceded these other singers that I can't remember the names of these other singers. And she was the oldest of the 3 Boswell sisters. They married, and she married as well. And the others went out of the music business, and she continued to perform. Now, this is really something. She was paralyzed from the hip down. And when she went on the stage, her dress was over. She was sitting in a chair, and the dress was entirely over the chair. And she would sit there with the curtain down, and when the curtain went up, she'd right in the middle of the thing, and she used to sing. And this man here was the musical director of the radio station in Cleveland, Ohio. This is his family here that I'm with.
I see.
As I said, I used to hang out at the stage door canteen, and this was an actress on Broadway, Dorothy McGuire. Do you remember that name?
It's famous.
Famous? Yeah. So she was out entertaining us, and pretty well known in the stage door canteen. And I was inducted into a club that they had. It was called the Loyal Order of the Wolves. and I got this thing here. This is a wolf, and this stands for sex appeal. and I couldn't wear it because you're not allowed to wear anything on your uniform.
Right.
So that's really very interesting. And this was a fellow that I palled out with. He was married. His wife. This is me. This is the same fellow with his wife and myself, and we used to hang out together.
So you made some friends in Queens?
Yes. Yeah, well, they were in the service with me. They worked in the pay office.
I see.
And when all the girls came up, this was the girl that replaced me. Her name was Betty Herman. And I did very well in the pay office because I was 31 years old at the time when I joined, and all of the men that were there, they were all young men. They were 18, 19, 20 years old. And I had been in the workforce now for about 13 years, and we did pay. We took care of the payments of the various Coast Guard stations, and it involved a tremendous amount of typing, because in those days we didn't have the computer.
Right.
And I got to be the #1 typist. I could type 125 words a minute in those days.
Yeah,
I could still do that. So, and this was at Erie, Pennsylvania. They taught us to shoot guns, rifles. Why they taught us to shoot rifles, I don't know, because we were on a ship.
Right, you never used it.
We never used it at all. So, and this is entertainment. These are entertainers at the Stage Door Canteen in Cleveland, Ohio. This is an orchestra leader, Bob Chester. This was an actress, Anita Gordon. She was a foreign actress. And this is Tom Conway, an actor. I don't know if you remember him or not. This is also a group of actors. This is the musical director of the Cleveland, Ohio radio station.
Oh, yes.
And I can't remember this one. This is an actress from Hollywood. And she came to entertain us. And she wasn't. These are the Earl Carroll girls that came to entertain us. And you can see I was always involved. That's me right here.
There you are.
Yeah. And here we are. This is the woman whose name I can't remember.
Oh, yes, yes.
Here she is. Yeah, I'm in all these pictures.
Yeah.
I was very much involved. And this is Connie Boswell.
Oh, I see.
She see how big this thing is, the covered chair. She was terrific. Paralyzed woman.
Yeah.
This is done at the Stage Door Canteen. Also, this is Connie Boswell again. Let me see. And this guy you would remember, Woody Herman. You remember him, the orchestra leader?
Yes.
He was there to entertain us. And this is Bonita Granville. You remember her? She's an actress.
I don't remember.
She died recently in that year. Now this is funny. When the photographer was taking this picture, this guy had his hand on her leg, and he told her, "You got to get that off there." And he stopped. He had the hand off, and we went to take the picture. His hand was back there.
Stuck it in anyway.
Yeah. And this is Bonita Granville again. Here it is. You see the hand on the...
Yeah.
This is an orchestra leader. This you might know, Gene Cooper.
Yes.
And this was his singer. He was a drummer, but he had his own band. Went to entertain us. And this was a woman, her name was Beatrice Kay. She sang old-time songs. And this guy, he was an artist.
Oh, yes. Did he draw the pictures of you? There was some...
Yeah. Now, being in Cleveland was the happiest time of my life because I never had as many women as I had in Cleveland, Ohio. These are just 6 of the women that I used to go out with.
Oh, yeah.
And it was great because being a sailor, we were able to get into all the ballparks, the baseball, football, hockey, also the Broadway plays. I would take these gals to all of these things. And so I traveled all the transportation free of charge, whether you're on a streetcar, a bus, whatever. So it was just wonderful.
Oh, yes.
But it was good because I went in as the lowest rank, as an apprentice seaman. And the pay at those days was $50 a month. So I was spending money out of my savings, really, to get along. So here we are. Now these are just various scenes. This is what LSTs look like when they're in the rear loading up. Let's see what else we have here. When I went down from San Francisco to New Guinea, those who had never passed the equator had to be hazed. And we got it was really, really terrible. They took a razor thing, they made a cross on my head, and so I had to, after they got finished, I had to cut off everything because it was terrible. And then you had to go along the ship, and they whacked you in the rear end. So this is the captain of the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And now when I went on the ship, I was 33 years old. The captain was 25. So, and I liked him very much. I'm still in touch with him. He lives in Vero Beach, down in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
This is some of the crew.
Oh, yes. Now, was it the same crew throughout the war?
Yeah. Actually, when we went on the ship, we were replacing the crew that was on the ship for a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And so we all had to be on the ship for a year and a half. So this is what we did.
I see.
It was their turn to go home, and we were looking at them and wondering whether we would love to be going back. The Coast Guard, requested promotion for me to be a chief petty officer.
Oh.
So we didn't have photostats, so I retyped it because I wanted to have a copy of it.
Right.
And this is the letter from the commandant of the Coast Guard saying that they're turning it down, but when there's an opening, I would be able to get it.
I see.
Now, I must tell you, it came through at the end of the war.
It did. Good.
And I was in San Francisco, and I was talking to the man that would take care of it, and he told me I think I would get $5,000 plus the advancement to the chief petty officer, but I would have to stay into the Coast Guard for another 3 years.
Oh.
And I said, nothing doing. I can't. I had enough.
Mm-hmm.
So some fellows did stay in for another 3 years. But and this was a shot that was taken from the official photographers we had on the ship, and it was sent to New York City for the newspapers. But it never, as far as I know, it never got into the newspapers. So this was a shot. This is also the Japanese propaganda. And here they used actors and actresses for these pictures.
The pictures.
I think this is Carol Lombard.
Oh.
I don't know who these other people are.
And it makes it look like they're saying those things.
And these I took out of newspapers because they were some of the invasion that I participated in. So, and now the Japanese, this is invasion money of the Dutch East Indies. This is money that they printed up. And this is for British North Borneo. This is Japanese money. This is all Japanese money. And this is Japanese money in the Philippines. And this money they actually used because they were in control of the Philippines. And this was invasion money of India. I don't know how I got that, but we know India. And this is money that we used in the Philippines to pay the Filipinos. Now, if Japan had won the war, this is the money you'd be using. This is invasion money of the United States. You see, these are all the different. You see the different denominations.
Paper money for cents. Yeah.
No, this is $1, $5, $10, and this is the set of coins they have printed money. There's your money for here.
Okay.
And this is real money when we're in this is Mindanao, I think. It was printed by the Philippine government during World War II. But this is Mindanao, one of the islands in the Philippines. They used that. And this is money that the Australians got, and they gave me some of this stuff for my scrapbook. And this is real money, the Dutch East Indies. You could go to, if you were in the Dutch East Indies, the Netherlands Indies, you could spend this money today. And this is money in the Philippines when we own the Philippines. We don't have them anymore.
Right.
And this is money in Dutch Borneo, and this is real money in the Philippines. So the U.S. soldiers and sailors could spend this money, or they could spend the military money that was given to them. So here it is again. This is all the different denominations in Japan. And this is one, as I said, if you want to go to bed with a girl, this is $100.
That's the one.
Yeah. And this is the songs we used to sing aboard ship. I used to type this stuff. These were songs we used to sing. We had to entertain ourselves, you know.
Yes, I guess if you're on the ship all the time, yeah.
Right. So that's that. Now I have something very interesting here. In World War II, we had an aviator for the U.S. Air Force in the Pacific who downed 40 Japanese planes. And he got to be, this is the guy, his name is Richard Bong, Richard Ira Bong. This is his wife, and this was his plane. Here he is with his plane.
Oh, yeah.
Now, he was born in the same town where my daughter happens to live, and that's Superior, Wisconsin. My daughter lives there. My daughter and her husband. My son-in-law is a professor at the University of Wisconsin, and my daughter lives there, and they have a son. And this fellow was such a hero in World War II. They brought him back to the United States before the war ended. They were afraid he would get killed. And they used him to sell Liberty bonds. And he traveled all over the country. And I saw him when he came to Cleveland. I was in Cleveland when he came to all the big cities, sell the Liberty bonds. And after the war, he went to work for one of the companies on the West Coast. He was a pilot that tried out these planes. He was killed in one of those things. Yeah. So now in Wisconsin, he's a very big man. They worship him. They recently built a large bridge in that goes from Wisconsin to Duluth, Minnesota, and it's called the Richard Bong Bridge. And I've crossed that bridge a few times. Now, recently, a year ago, they built a memorial to him, and they refurbished this plane from World War II. Now, that's 65 years ago. And in this memorial, they have this plane. And in addition to that, in this memorial building, one wall, they have plaques for men who served in the Pacific, regardless what their rank was, or so forth and so on. So my daughter and my son-in-law gave my name in, and I got into this business.
You're on that wall.
This is my plaque here.
Oh, that's nice.
See, and it got onto the. Here it is. It's four men that they pasted onto the wall. And this is my daughter. This is my son-in-law. And this is the wall. Can you see it?
Oh yes, I can. Yes.
And this is mine. That went up on
very
there.
Nice.
Isn't that very nice? And this is his plane that they refurbished. It's a beautiful memorial to him.
Yes, it is.
This is with my daughter. This is me. I'm signing in here. This is my grandson. This is my son-in-law right here. You'll see a bit of, here he is here.
Oh, yeah.
This is my son-in-law, my daughter, and my grandson. And let me see. Now here I am with this thing.
Right.
I also have a certificate. I should put it in here.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is my grandson and myself. So I have pictures. I think I'll put it in the scrapbook because I have all additional pictures with my daughter. With the background of the wall.
Right.
My grandson, my son-in-law.
And when was this? What year was this?
This was last year.
Last year.
Yeah. This is the plane. I took a picture.
Oh yes.
With the plane here. And I have the World War II veteran. This is the plane again.
Mm-hmm.
And here I was wearing, I have two hats. One is the Coast Guard and one is the Navy, so I can wear either one.
Right.
I can't wear them both at the same time, but this is my little family that live in Wisconsin.
Yes, very nice.
So that's it.
You have just the one daughter?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I have one daughter and one grandson. That's all I have, but
Mm-hmm.
they're both great, and I have one, but that's really very nice.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's it. There's the story. You got all that in the...
I think so, yes.
Okay, great.
I just wanted to know what you did after the war. What was your... Did you go back to the music?
When I worked for the music business, I worked two jobs, believe it or not. My main job, I worked for importers of confectionery and cookies.
Mm-hmm.
I did that for many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 days a week, one evening and one day, I worked with the music publisher.
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm.
So that's what I did. So when I came back, I couldn't work for the music publisher, but they had the job waiting for me with the importers of confectionery and cookies.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked for the importers of confectionery and cookies just about all my life.
Mm-hmm. Now you came back and settled. Did you settle right on Long Island, or did you come back
No.
to New York? Or
No, I was living in Brooklyn before I went in, and I came back to live with my mother, and I met a girl at a party right after the war. She was from Yonkers, and I married her.
Ah. Mm-hmm.
And she was married for, we were married for 45 years. We probably would have been married much longer, but she died from emphysema. She was a smoker.
Oh, yeah.
So that ended that. So I've been living alone since then. I don't want to get married.
Mm-hmm.
I've had many, many offers they were all widows, all widows.
Right.
And after the war, they were women of 75 years old. And then later on, they got to be 80 years old that were offered to me.
Mm-hmm.
And believe it or not, I was offered a 94-year-old woman. I'm not fooling, I'm serious. I had a neighbor of mine come to me and said, "Hey, we see you're 94 years." They all know how old I am.
Mm-hmm.
You're 94 and you do all these things. One of the things I do, I have a snowblower. I go down the whole block. I do the whole...
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. But it's not heavy work because it's self-propelled.
I see.
So all you do is just steer it. Yeah, direct it.
Mm-hmm.
And believe it or not, I'm still working.
Are you?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I'm now working for a psychologist. And what this thing is this. In New York City and in Long Island, they're picking up people who are driving DWI
Mm-hmm.
and DWAI. DWAI is driving while ability impaired. That's drugs.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Mm-hmm.
And they used to confiscate their cars, and there was lawsuits on that, and they found it was illegal.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't confiscate the cars anymore, but they do take away their driving license.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to go to a psychologist for treatment, and they have to hire a lawyer. The psychologist treats them, and he writes a letter to the lawyer who appears before the judge.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I come in. The psychologist has handwriting that's not so hot, so he's invited me to do the letters.
Mm-hmm.
So what he does, he handwrites a letter and faxes it to me.
Mm-hmm.
I do up the letter and then fax it back to him.
I see. Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I do an awful lot of letters a month. Last month I did 150 letters. You know what that means? That means you had
All those
these people on. So far this month I think I've done 30 letters already.
Mm-hmm. All
So-
those people are out the road driving.
So I started with the psychologist in 1997, and I'm still doing it. But I do this from my home.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's nice, yes.
So I make a little money on the side, and it keeps me active.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you certainly look like you're active and
Yeah.
involved, and don't
You
look
see,
like you're
I'm-
94.
I'm still driving.
Yes, no, that's very
Yeah.
good. That's the way to do it, yes.
Yeah. So So that's the story of my life.
Well, thank you very much
Yeah.
for
All
this
right.
interview.
Okay. This is the surrender ceremonies on the, what ship was it? I can't remember anymore. Oh, here it is, the Missouri. And fortunately for me, I was able to witness this.
Oh,
Yeah.
that must
Well, they let this, a bunch of sailors go on this. We used to hang on to ships that were facing this, so we would be able to see it. So they had about 2 men from every ship, and I was very fortunate being one of the 2 men that were able to witness this. I don't know if these names are familiar. This is Douglas MacArthur.
Okay, I recognize that.
This is Admiral Nimitz.
Yeah, I think I've heard of him.
You heard of him? This is Halsey, Admiral Halsey.
Yeah, I think I've heard of him too.
Must have heard of him too.
My husband's interested in history and wars and so forth, so he must have talked about these things.
Now, this is my brother who jumped out of airplanes. And these are all of my relatives.
Oh.
These are all cousins that were in the service.
Oh.
All of us. And this I took out of Life magazine.
Yes.
Showing the occupation of Japan, which I was in. And this is something we used to type up. We would always celebrate with a dinner. And this, let me see what this was. Can't remember what this is. Oh, it must have been after the war. This is from James Forrestal, who was the Secretary of the Navy, giving us, what should I say, congratulating us and all of this kind of business. So we did this, and this is the dinner that we had in celebration of it.
Oh, yeah.
And it all sounds very good. Roast young turkey and we drank their beer, which was excellent. They still sell it here. I went into the post office and got Japanese stamps. I thought that would be nice. And these are pictures in and around Japan. This is Douglas MacArthur. And these are pictures in and around Tokyo. This is the Emperor's place of Japan. This is the gate to it. And this is inside a geisha house.
Oh.
Yeah. Now the geishas are not prostitutes. They're just entertainers.
I've been reading memoirs of a geisha.
Oh yeah, I read that too.
I gathered that that's what they are.
They're beautiful girls. Yeah.
That's very interesting.
So this is in and around. To give you an idea, now these are cards that I bought, and I think most of them are actresses. They're really very pretty girls.
Yes.
Very pretty.
Yes, they are.
Here we are. This is the song of the Coast Guard, Semper Paratus. The Marines have Semper Fidelis. That means, you know what it means?
Always faithful?
Right.
Okay.
And Semper Paratus means always ready. Yeah. So, being I worked in the music business, I was able to get this. I got a bunch of copies and gave it to my shipmates. Here they are. And this is money that my brother sent me from Europe. This is German money. And you can imagine, now this is 50 million marks. Can you imagine? This is 100 million marks. all worthless. Okay. These are just, tell you what this is. Now this is really very interesting. You as a librarian should be interested in this. In World War II, all of the magazines took their magazines and they reduced them in size, you know.
Oh, to save on paper?
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah. And all of these things were sent to the soldiers and the sailors.
Oh.
So I read many magazines that were sent to us, and this is what they looked like. I thought I would keep it for posterity.
Yes.
That's something. You wouldn't remember it because you weren't around those days, unless I don't know, unless you've seen. This is MacArthur returning after World War. No, not after we invaded Leyte. You know, he was in the Philippines when the war broke out, and And that was the Bataan Peninsula. They had to surrender. And those that surrendered had a terrible time because they took them on a march. I think it was a 100-mile march from Bataan to somewhere in Japan. And if you stopped or you couldn't go on, they just killed you. They shot you. But they took him away in a submarine. They wanted him as he was one of the top men in the army. They took him and his wife, who was living with him at the submarine. But he vowed that he would come back, and this is his return to the Philippines.
I remember you said, I shall return.
Right, hey, you're very good. Now, this is really something nice. This is a Philippine woman that was giving birth, and they took her, I don't know how they came to do it, they took her aboard an LST, and they delivered the baby.
Oh.
That's just a picture of him.
Oh, my goodness.
Isn't that something? And this is what an LST looks like, all loaded. There's two decks. There's a lower deck, which is called the tank deck, and this is the upper deck. So both decks are loaded with trucks, tanks, and everything that they needed to fight the war. And this is what it looks like at an invasion, but this is just one part.
Yeah.
We would go in an invasion with like something like 750 to 1,000 LSTs.
Oh, wow.
And this is a rocket ship. And when you go into this ship went into the invasion, and they shot these rockets. It's the loudest noise that you've ever heard. I think I'm still slightly deaf from this thing. And this is the most important.
Yes.
This is a photostat. I have it, the original in a frame. You see, this is what I look like going back at the end of the war.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I was in Honolulu December 9th, 1945, and I got married after the war. And my daughter was born December 9th, 3 years later, on the same day. Isn't that something?
That is, yeah.
This is a list of all the boys that were on the ship with me, the names and addresses. 40 of them are gone now, 1/3. We had 120 men is what goes on the LST. And this is something I used to type up. This was what we had each week. This was the food that we did. Yeah, the menu. And it looks, as I say, it looks like wonderful stuff, but it's all canned.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's that one. Let's see. Now, these were papers I used to buy in the Philippines, and I was able to read them and find out what's going on. So I used to buy all these little papers. They cost very little money, so it doesn't matter. And these are shots in and around Manila, by the way. Well, you're going to see here, all of these are pictures in Manila, and you can see some of the devastation that happened. You can see this here. Let me see that.
Now, again, did the photographers who were with you take these
Yes,
pictures?
they took this,
them.
And this I have to tell you, before we boarded ship in San Francisco, they made sure we had all of the clothing that we should have. And we didn't know where we were going. And so we got clothing, pea coats, heavy underwear, things for the north, and so forth. And we get down to South Pacific, the heat is fantastic. It's hot, we couldn't use anything. So I gave this fellow my heavy underwear, and here he is. This is a Filipino. The heat is 110, 150 degrees. He's wearing this heavy underwear, and he's happy to get it. And also, this is me giving candy to the children. And the candy I used to give them was this. In World War II, I don't know who it was, but they decided we would have chocolate. And someone got the bright idea that we should have chocolate that wouldn't melt in the South Pacific. So we got this chocolate, and it was the most horrible tasting thing I ever tasted. And none of the fellas, nobody would eat it. So we would give it to the kids when we were sure. You see them here?
Yes,
I used to give all the children
Did they seem to like it all right?
Yeah, they loved it. They loved
Something
it.
different, I guess.
We were able to get rid of it that way. And so now this is in the harbor of Manila,
Oh, yes.
and you can see how many sunken ships they have there.
Mm-hmm.
The fighting in Manila was just horrible, absolutely horrible.
Mm-hmm.
This is in and around Manila that the photographers were able to give me these pictures, so I figured I'd put them in here. These are all Manila. This is inside a club, a nightclub in Manila.
Mm-hmm.
Here again, you see, wherever you went in the bay, you had sunken ships.
Mm-hmm.
This is again Manila. All of this is Manila. This is in the tank deck of an LST.
Mm-hmm.
They will have freight and other things.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see what else we have here. This was the last invasion of the war. This is Balikpapan, Borneo.
Mm-hmm.
And we invaded that because of the oil, and then we loused up there. We shot up there all the tanks of oil.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what else we got. And this is also in Borneo. They didn't have any beaches, so we had the sailors come into these little, we call them LCVPs. They're small boats, running boats.
Mm-hmm.
Here's one.
Mm-hmm.
And we took them into the invasion that way. You can see we didn't have any beaches there.
Right.
So this is the soldiers looking to where they were going.
Mm-hmm.
We take them into the land in Balikpapan, Borneo. See, these are all little boats going into the.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was a hard way for them to fight because you could take in a small amount at a time. But it was really very dangerous to come with a troop ship because it took an awful long time to unload it.
Mm-hmm.
And we were at one of the invasions where they had a troop ship in addition to the LSTs, and the troop ship was half empty, and the other half of the ship was loaded with soldiers were waiting for the small boats to take them, and along comes a suicide plane, bombed them. I think they killed them all. They killed them all, and we had sirens going. They wanted all the doctors to come over to that troop ship, and each of the LSTs carried a doctor. So we had, if we were 1,000 LSTs, we had 1,000 doctors. They all had to go there to help out. And when our doctor came back a long time later, he said the devastation was horrible. When he went aboard ship, he said you saw arms and legs all over the place, and the blood was flowing like water. So you can imagine what devastation that was. Now, these are other pictures that I got from the photographers. When the Japanese had the Philippines, they were in control of the Philippines. They treated the Filipinos very badly, and these are some of the atrocity shots. You see what they did to his neck? Look at this fellow with the nose. They chopped his nose, and this man here is starved. Just skin and bone. He had a whole bunch of these atrocity shots. I was able to get 3 of them.
The Japanese had taken over all these places that you went into. U.S. was trying to take them back.
All of the islands, and the reason we had to get these islands was the Air Force needed places for their planes. That was why we had to fight for these for the very islands. And this is a General Stilwell. This is one of the islands, and this was the surrender ceremonies at one of the islands. And this I took off dead Japanese. I used to go ashore, and there were dead Japanese. I took them off, took it out of their whatever they had. These are all, I don't know what they are, but I thought I should have it. This is what dead Japanese. Now, during the war, the United States built propaganda. the U.S. built propaganda, and these are propaganda things telling the Japanese, for instance, here we're going from here to Japan to get you, and these are all things thrown to the Japanese, propaganda that that they should better stop fighting or whatever. Now, so this is the United States propaganda thrown to the Japanese. This is the United States propaganda. No, this is Japanese propaganda thrown to the Americans and the Australians. Look at how much better they look than our propaganda.
Yes, much more colorful.
Right?
Yes.
And
attracts your attention. Yes.
here now they said this is propaganda, that unforgettable embrace under the beautiful moon with the warmth of her shapely body. And then they go on to say, if you do not do this, this is what you can expect.
Oh.
But if you continue to resist, then under the beautiful tropical moon, only death awaits you. That was Japanese propaganda. And let me see if I have this here. No. On the back of some of these gives you information how to surrender.
Oh.
I'll show you. Here it is. This is the back of these things. Come towards our lines, waving a white flag. Strap your gun over your left shoulder. Show this ticket to the entry, and any number of you can surrender with this one ticket.
They're trying to make it easy for you.
Yeah. This is Japanese propaganda. This is President Roosevelt pushing the Australians to go to war.
Oh, that's what they're saying.
and this is more propaganda. Now look at this. This is your happiness at home in Australia. Let's see. Is sacrificed that American warmongers may indulge in this. So this is the Americans in bed with and this was one piece of propaganda. We had Australians on the ship, and I showed it to the Australians, and they were offering me all kinds of money. I could have sold this for $50, $100. This is propaganda. The Americans are in bed with the Australian women, while the Australians are chasing these fuzzy wuzzies, or whatever they call them. So their propaganda was much better than ours.
Yes, it looks like it. Yes.
And this